Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Ermenkov. I'm a ruling reality coach, and I would like to continue my series, Daily Reality with Alex, where I'm constantly giving you my feedback and my expressions about reality. It is very important when we are moving to reality to know that actually reality is complex. Our mind, in order to understand reality, is non-stop trying to simplify it. And through the educational system, we are constantly learning ourselves and educating ourselves to simplify everything in order to create concepts in our mind and to try to understand reality. But in this way, we are trying to create our maps, the way we are going to think and to start programming our perception. But the problem is that this is not reality. Reality is much more complex, much more raw, and it is not possible to see the specifics when you are moving through the daily reality, and all of us. So because of this, I would like to speak today about something that we never notice, we don't understand, we ignore it, but it is actually part of the building blocks of reality. And only if we understand the constructs of reality, we are going to start answering for ourselves the questions. All of us need to understand that knowledge, understanding, it's like a pyramid. In our experience, we are in the bottom of the pyramid and we cannot understand what is happening on the top and why reality is actually made like it is, because we are staying in our realm, in our surface, and cannot comprehend everything that is happening. But today I would like to bring you all up to the top of the pyramid and to go back to the beginning and to start explaining you some things about the egregors. We are to constantly contemplate and reflect upon what we are, why we are, where we are, what's our purpose and meaning, of course, but also to know our powers. There are a lot of things that we are able, once we understand and realize them, to very easily start to implement them, but consciously in our personal daily reality. And I'm going to start with the beginning, because in the beginning, once we understand the beginning, we are moving to the top of the pyramid, where everything looks like general, but all the connections of our daily reality are brought up very dense into the top of the pyramid, where everything starts to make sense. So because there are maybe approximately 10 or 15 different topics that are going to my mind in the moment, and I don't know exactly which way to start expanding this knowledge for you, I'm going to start maybe with one very big power that we the human beings have. And we have the conception that we're individualized beings, or consciousnesses, or whatever labels we want to use. But actually, our biggest strength compared to all other living beings, and that's why we have a special role here, is that we can work in large numbers and big communities and create a common upper level type of will and intent and goal and direction. Of course, some of us can say, Alex, but it is the same, well, let's say, with the birds. They're flying from one part of the oceans or the seas to the other, and they work also in big numbers, and they have some type of communication. Maybe we don't understand it, but also we, the human beings, are working actually in a very well organized way in very big numbers. And that's why when the human beings were created and put into this fractal realm of reality, we have something that we are creating constantly in our reality. Of course, it is based on energy. It is 100% unseen, but we are constantly supporting it, and we are constantly giving our energy to it. And this is the so-called egregors. The egregors are energetical structures that are constantly attracting us, and this type of energetical structures are constantly asking for our attention, for our energy, for our feelings. So, for example, when we are reacting, we are giving away energy. When we are constantly putting our attention upon something, it magnifies, it becomes bigger, and so on and so on. And if you go and start reflecting inside about what exactly is happening during our daily interaction, and once we are able to go into clarity and see and realize and understand that there are so many invisible building blocks that are determining everything that we are experiencing, and this type of building blocks are the so-called egregors. Now, the problem with reality is that everything is probable, and we, the human beings, as part of the so-called kind of beings that are the witnessers, we are the ones that are the experiencers of reality. So we are, by our attention and our focus, constantly empowering this type of energetical entities called egregors. And I know a lot of us are thinking about the matrix and what were the human beings doing there and why they're used as batteries and what exactly is the energy of the human beings supporting. Now, if we move away from the physical matter reality and go into the non-physical reality, this is where these egregors exist, and these are type of non-visible structures that all of us are constantly regarding them, and we are constantly being in some type of relationship with them. And I'll give you now very small, simple examples to understand it. Each of us, in the moment, we are part of one big egregor called the planet Earth. Within the Earth realm, we all exist together, so we are to have common earthly goals. We are keeping our planet, we are trying to make common actions towards preserving or towards exploiting the planet. It doesn't matter, because we are to understand what are we going to do with this limited resource. So based on this, we are creating an 8 billion people egregor that we are constantly in necessity to put energy towards in order this type of egregor to constantly exist in our mind. The second type of egregors, which are one of the biggest on the planet, are the so-called nations. I am a Bulgarian, I am European, so I'm constantly feeding my national egregor, I'm constantly feeding my European egregor through my taxes, through my attention, through the way the Bulgarians or the Europeans are thinking. And of course, the Americans are feeding their American egregor, the Chinese egregor, the Russians, the Russian egregor. Then we are constantly connecting different types of relationship, but anyhow, we are divided, and each of us are feeding different types of invisible egregors we call nations. then because we the beings are created in such a way that we are impossible to exist without the above and the interaction between the above and the below, and all the egregors are part of the above structures of reality. So once we know that these above structures are to exist in order we to be able to move through reality, and each of us are constantly attracted to and are constantly in relevance to a lot of these egregors. For example, when I'm in Bulgaria or in Europe, I'm abiding upon the European laws, I'm a subject in a sense. So subconsciously, I'm in automatic and automaton type of mode where I am anyhow feeding this type of egregor. Then some of the egregors are non-optional. I cannot choose. For example, even if I want, I cannot be a subject of 2 European countries. I can choose only one for taxational purposes, where I'm spending more than half of the year. This is my taxational type of egregor that is going to take away the money that I'm creating. And there are also other type of limitations about these egregors, but anyhow, I'm constantly feeding them. Then the thing that I would like to explain to you that it's not in necessity we to try to move away out of them. They are part of the creation, and the creation is moved by their existence. The only thing that is very important for all of us to understand that we are to actually know how to use them, how much we are to paying attention, how much we are not to pay them attention. And then to know the different type of escaping mechanism, because even if we want to accept it or not, it is not possible for a human being to be independent from these egregors. I cannot be a non-national type of entity. I need to choose an egregor that I'm going to feed. For example, if I was an American and I want to say, okay, I don't want to be any more American national, it is first very hard, and then I cannot stay like non-citizen of any country. And I don't know if there is anyhow an option to be without egregor, but for sure, we are living in this type of structures. Then once you understand and you go down the pyramid and the different levels of how societies and civilization is built, it is built based on the way we are feeding this invisible type of egregors. And it is not possible for us to exist without understanding them. Then the big problem is when conflicts start to appear between the big egregors, and once we start feeding the different ones, and then the conflict spreads. And when I am, for example, visiting you and we are in interaction, and for example, let's say you are from Iran, I am from Europe, and I immediately know that because of my egregor is in conflict with your egregor, so I don't spot you as a very legitimate type of interactional being, and I'm going to have all my prejudice and so on. And of course, we know that on the surface, we are fighting against different type of prejudices and so on and so on. But under the surface, in the invisible, it's very hard, and we are to learn how to not pay attention, how to disregard what the egregors require from us, and how to find this balancing escaping modes. And then once you start understanding this type of mantra in the same, that it is very important type of saying that there is nothing to prove, nothing to conquer, nothing to defend, then this gives you power to detach from what the egregors require from us. And Alex, you can say, but isn't it something like the gods in the past, that everyone should feed a god and to worship him and to give him sacrifices in order to have a nice and pleasantful experience on the earthly reality? Everything is a reflection of what is, and that's why to some extent it is so, but it's up to us to decide to what extent we are to revere the different egregors that exist. If we are trying to 100% resist everything that is in the structure of reality, we are going to become beings that are non-functional, and we will be 100% in resistance, and we will not be able to perform. So this is not the option. The option is to understand what is exactly in reality, and then to know how to work with them in the sense that we are able to have our choices. And we have our dues, which we are to pay to some of the egregors anyhow. We know that there are two things that are inevitable. One is taxation and the other is death. And even if you are the most spiritual and transcended person, or whatever you want to be, even if you live in Tibet, you are still a subject of the autonomous egregor of this type of community, and then it is anyhow under the Chinese protection. And in a sense, the physical matter and the non-physical matter reality are 100% connected, so the perception of freedom is only perception. Of course, then what are the possibility for each of us to be as free as possible from the egregors by not paying so much attention? And here there are different strategies, there are different propositions. You can go into the anarchist type of movements where everything in the governments is evil, and we are to go into 100% libertarianism and so on and so on. And there are so many different options, and that's why reality is very wonderful. But we are not possible to orient in reality if we stay in the fundamental part, if we don't understand how the pyramid is working on the top. Then, once we know that there are egregors, it's very important to start monitoring our attention and focus. Because if you spend constantly time on feeding one egregor, and the interesting thing of the egregors that they are part of the so-called duality that exists, and that's why non-duality is impossible to be here in this experience, because of the invisible egregors, which we are, in a sense, in necessity to feed. The only thing we can do is to observe them, to acknowledge that they exist, and then to decide what we are to do. Of course, if we go deeper into this egregor type of thinking, we are going to understand that it can be used, and it is part of the way we, the human being, are involved into the creation of reality. And that's why a lot of beings, we don't understand the power of fate, and fate is the substance of things hoped for. So let's say if 5 billion of us are supporting strongly, let's say, a Muslim worldview, and we're saying that everything that is in this type of egregorial experience is the only right egregor we all are going to feed, and then it becomes powerful. Have you ever thought why everybody is fighting for our attention? Why all of the reality is trying to influence us? Yes, from the moment we open our eyes, all the egregors that exist on the different levels, they want us to pay our worship to them. And I know we think that we are the gods and we are the big ones, but actually all these type of invisible egregors we are giving away through our attention, through the way we are spending the time. For example, when we are constantly using our telephones, and everything here that you see, all the type of apps, these are part of the egregorial presentation. When I'm spending 5 hours per day in the TikTok, which is part of the Chinese egregorial way of influencing reality, and of course I have fun, I have pleasure, I'm watching, I'm putting my attention upon something, I'm feeding there, but I'm to understand what is actually happening in reality and why I am in the moment attached to this egregor. And once we start seeing how many things we are feeding, then we are going to understand where are we wasting our energy. But Alex, what are the options? Okay, for example, in a sense, if I'm to feed as little as possible egregors with what I'm going to use my attention for and what I'm going to use my energy for. The first thing is that we can create our own personal egregors that we are to feed and to follow, and they're the so-called dreams. Once we start creating our own personal dreams, what is happening in our own personal goals, we will not have time for all the other things that are trying to catch our attention, and that's why it's good to move into goal setting, to move into imagination, to move into the dreams. For example, I have created approximately 4 flows that are little by little becoming my egregors that I'm feeding into the reality, but I know that I am the generator, and long-term, of course, it's possible for them to be beneficial for all the humanity. I'm not in a necessity to use, let's say, the stock exchange and to constantly be into the understanding of all the human beings' possibility to feed the stock exchange or to feed the crypto. I'm constantly asked to join this egregor. And I don't want to, because I have created my own investment egregors where I'm controlling almost everything in reality, and I'm producing my own personal material effects for which I'm paying my taxes in a lot of countries. This is also an option. And from this point of view, once we understand that everything that is invisible, but we the human beings are paying attention to or are using our energy and are feeding it, in a sense, we are becoming slaves of it, but also it is giving us some rewards. Otherwise, we are not going to do it. And then we understand that all the time we are just representatives of different invisible type of egregors. Now, when I'm speaking with you, I am, in a sense, influencing you towards some of the egregors that are working for me. Do I want to project them upon you? If I don't understand how reality works, I subconsciously am going to do it. But I'm just showing you examples how I'm using them in order to model and to work with my own reality. If there is an egregor I'm willingly creating into reality right now, it is the so-called ruling reality masters egregor, where I want and I envision a movement of people who understand what is happening behind the surface and are deeply involved into their responsibility to know exactly what they are creating, what they are feeding, and how they are positioning themselves as rulers of their own personal reality. And yes, I'm feeding this egregor, I'm giving it my attention, I'm putting a lot into it, and it is being beneficial for maybe small community of people. Maybe I'm able to influence not more than 50 to 300 people in the moment. But am I doing it in order to create something that is going to give me something back? No, I'm just willing to constantly express and to give away what I'm anyhow doing with myself. And then we are constantly collaborating. Anyhow, it is impossible, we as human beings, not to be united and not to collaborate and not to cooperate. And this is the egregor that I'm proposing for people that are willing to interact upon this specific subject. Then when we are, this is the most common egregor that we are constantly anyhow feeding. This is the egregor of our working companies. There is no company on the planet of the earth that is not an egregor. Yes, Tesla is an egregor, Coca-Cola is an egregor. All of these so-called physical companies that produce physical products, they're based on a non-physical type of environment that is fed from their workers. In the past, when I was working for other companies, I was giving away 8 to 10 hours a day from my energy, my creative force, everything in order to feed this egregor, in order this type of organization to succeed and to do its mission, vision, and purpose for all of the humanity. Then when I created and was co-founder of our own company, we started to create our own egregor that is now drawing out my personal energy, the energy of approximately 35 people, and it is growing in potential, it is growing in probabilities, it is growing as environment type of expressions and so on and so on. But we are to learn that we are or creating or are used by different types of egregor, and everything is done by our attention. And from the moment we wake up, we are constantly giving away our energy for this type of egregors. And because I'm a Christian, and I'm a Christian from 17 years old, now I'm almost 50. So for more than 30 years, I'm feeding my most dear and precious egregor of Christianity. And a lot of people are wondering why in the 10 Commandments, the first one is to worship your God with all your heart, with all your being, with all your energy, with everything that you have, and not to have other gods. So once you choose the egregor of the creator in this example, you are not to use other type of egregors in the same time for the same purpose. And there are other examples where you cannot serve two masters because one you are going to love and the other you are going to hate. And this is also giving you this relationship between the different types of asking for our attention, invisible beings. So in a sense, the creator is the fundamental egregor that exists, and all the creation is to give him attention. If the creation wants to interact in the construct of reality and to understand it. Of course, today in the 21st century, in the year 2023, we have so many movements, even movements against the basic egregors, and we the human beings are thinking that if we resist the matrix, because the matrix is evil, and we never know if the egregors are benevolent. And the truth is, to some extent, that they are neutral. But the way we approach them gives them specific type of attitudes with which they are responding to us. And we are so much surrounded with different types of egregors, you cannot imagine that we are maybe using 90 to 80%, 90 to 95% of our time just dealing with egregors. Sports teams are egregors. I'm from this team, you are from that team. We can argue, we can say which is the better one, and so on and so on. And we can feed our egregors, we can follow them, we can know everything about them, we can imagine them, and so on and so on. In every area of life. For example, even when we have opinions, even when we have stands, even when we support specific movements or specific projects or specific parties or specific policies, we are entering different types of egregors, and this is part of the fundamental right of the human being to decide to whom we are going to serve as non-invisible entities. And this is part of the democracy that we are all striving for. If anyhow there are egregors, we are preferring to feel the perception that we have a free will, and at least to be able to choose whom are we going to feed and to serve. And of course, there are essential and non-essential type of egregors, and some of the non-essential egregors are called hobbies, and we are moving into different types of pleasureful ones and non-pleasureful ones, and so on and so on. But the important thing is to learn that managing of our attention and everything in the non-visible and non-material is also in an organizational structure. Yes, in the visible, where we have the forms and where we experience all the effects, we can see the structure. But in the non-physical and the non-visible, there is also structure, there is hierarchy, there are laws. So this is part of the constructural egregor that all the beings that exist are to sustain. And then, in a sense, it happens so that because of all this influence that existed before we were able to become aware for it, in a sense, we are in a constant automaton type of modes. So many times we don't know, and we subconsciously are feeding these egregors. And is there a solution for they to not exist? No, but at least we are the ones who are to have a rightly created relationship towards them and to have them in structure. For example, if my biggest and most important egregor is the creator, and that's why my strongest and biggest value is the fear of God, everything down the structure that is in non-coherence from all the egregors that exist with my basic egregor, I'm always to be subjected to the one that is the most essential for me. And when I'm making my choices, the fear of God is the number one thing that is, in a sense, giving me the ability to choose what to feed. And I know a lot of people are contemplating nonstop, and because I am in the moment, maybe in 20 to 30 different bubbles where I observe different type of thinking in order to understand more about reality. And there are such type of solutions where a lot of people are saying, well, but why the egregors are fighting with each other about our attention, and why they're envying if my attention is put on something else and not of them if I have chosen, because I know that a lot of us are dreaming for and think about the so-called unconditional reality, unconditional love. And what is love if not giving away our energy to the egregors we have decided? And if this is the most precious thing that we can emit out of our essence, to give away our love, our expression of praise, of worship, of adoration towards something, and especially if it is to be genuine, then we are understanding why this fight about our attention is existing. And it is part of our human ability to experience and to participate in reality. So in the beginning, when I heard about this type of wordings, I was a little bit afraid. And of course, from the perspective of Christianity, when I became Christian, the first thing I was feared with is the existence of the so-called evil egregor, the devil, and so on and so on. So I was wondering, well, I thought that everything is very nice, and now there is something very scary I should be afraid of. Of course, long term, when I became more mature, I understood that there is nothing in this type of direction, and the only fear that we are to consciously nourish and understand is the fear of God, because we are, in a sense, willing to please something that we can never 100% know and understand with our 5 physical senses. And I'm constantly using the egregor type of mindset and reality. And that's why it's very interesting when people are asking for clarity, when they want to understand, when they want to see the invisible, and all this invisible is 100% all the time around us. We are using it, we are paying it daily, our due obligations, and yet we constantly are willing to resist accepting its existence. So in a sense, we are trying to find other purpose and other meaning in life, but feeding these egregors. And once we understand that, in a sense, they are part in this realm here, especially in the lower part of the pyramid, where everything is in duality. Of course, if we move forward into our consciousness and our understanding, there are different type of traps there also, and more we are moving forward and upward. We are anyhow in a purpose here to understand the connection with the most fundamental and essential egregor that we are all to acknowledge and to develop connection with. And it is the most hard one, and a lot of us are just doing it blindly, or we are not willing to consciously move into this direction, and there are so many options and probabilities. But in a sense, once we are moving into the reality, and once we are starting to understand it, and once we give ourselves the ability to open our eyes and see what is not seen, then we are going to understand and realize how everything that the human beings are doing, everything actually makes sense, but from the perspective of how reality works. And once we understand the non-visible and its own way of working, then we are able to also detach, to also start using it rightfully and consciously decide where we are going to put our anchors in reality. Because we can go a lot in the generative type of knowledge, where we are almost ignoring 99% of everything that is, and we are staying in our 1% bubble and think that this is the reality. But for sure, we cannot be interactional. And we are going to be detached from reality, and this is not the purpose. The purpose is to be actively involved but in coherence and alliance with the way we are supposed to work and exist. And of course, because it's daily reality with Alex, I'm constantly doing it in my company, which is an egregor, in my family, which is an egregor, in my different 4 or 5 flows that I have created, which are egregors. I'm constantly fighting with different type of distractions that are trying to catch me. For example, one of the big distractions that catch me from the last year and a half, it was not the COVID so much as it was these conflicts that are happening, and how the big powers are regrouping themselves, and how the world is changing geopolitically and geoeconomically in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years, and how everything is going to be different for all of us. And in a sense, I was interested in the different movements that are happening, and long-term strategies, and so on, and how it is imprinted on my personal reality, because we are constantly influenced by the way there are movements happening in the different types of the egregors. And then if we are paying and feeding so much attention, we are not going to be able to use our biggest power, our attention and our focus towards what is important for us based on what in the moment we are able and possible to do in our daily reality. And that's why, for me personally, ruling reality beings is the only possible answer to the way that otherwise the egregors are trying to influence us, to project upon us, to try to control us in a non-forceful way, because there are the two types of controls, the forceful and the non-forceful. And when we go into the forceful control, which we haven't experienced in the last, let's say, 150 years, or it's very small now in very little places, it is forceful control. But if I'm put under forceful control, I'm not in a position to disobey at least some of the commandments that are going to be forcefully put upon me. And then, to some extent, the inner freedom no one is able to take away from us, but we are to understand the attention and the focus, because from there our freedom is possible to be emitted and to exist. And our freedom is only about to choose who is going to be our authentic egregors that we are going to feed. And is it possible to exist a reality where there are no necessity for us to feed something? Because there are a big type of discussions if we are actually batteries for some non-visible beings, if we are actually some type of a kettle type of existence, and we are long-term with other purposes. And there's so many discussions, so many things that we the human beings don't understand. And I'm really so amazed how little we the human beings know, and how satisfied we are that we are not willing to even know the truth. Because once we know the truth, we are not going to like it, and we are not willing to accept it. And there are so many philosophical movements that are describing, they are coming to somewhere in the description, and then they don't want to move forward because we the human beings will not like the truth as it is, and because there are very little options for all of us to choose from. And since nothing can 100% in this realm of reality where it's in the bottom of the pyramid be expressed, because true goodness, true perfection is not possible to exist in this realm, and nobody is able to present us the right example that is possible for all of us to follow, then in this reality we are constantly in searching only for the optimum solutions. It's not possible I to show you the perfect, I to show you the good, or anyone in the physical materiality to show you the good. Because everything else but the good, the perfect good, is in a lot of different nuances till its borders that are in the end, it's more and more becoming evil and non-beneficial and so on and so on. But of course, if we are willing to come closer to the optimum, closer to the truth, closer to what is the most natural, and closer to what we are created for, the only solution for me. I have taken my own paths and I'm working with my own ways into the reality, and I'm constantly exploring and looking for myself to what extent it is really helping me, to what extent it is elevating, and what exactly it is elevating in my own reality. And that's why when we are expressing our own personal or non-personal thoughts, because when we are discussing even the thoughts and the mindfulness, a lot of this is fed also from the egregors. Maybe 95 to 97, 8, or maybe 100% of my thoughts are not my thoughts, but this is still okay, because at least I can discern what type of egregor is creating this type of thoughts, and based on these thoughts, what type of the reality expression I'm able to reflect upon. I remember in the past when I met one person that was so much into knowledge and understanding, and I met him on an airplane. Everything, every word I was saying, he was citing the books and the movement and the principles from where the specific wordings that is coming out of my head is from. And that's why no one can give you and take the authority upon the truth. And then, of course, because of the way we are to choose, it's up to each of us to decide what exactly to follow. And if we lead, we also lead towards by example, or it doesn't matter how we lead, but it's always connected with egregors. So in a sense, we are influencing, but also we are promoting, and it is important to decide what to promote. So thank you for watching. Just know that these things exist. There are a lot of knowledge about them. You can move into understanding and exploring more, but the important thing is to do it as practical as possible for your daily usage, and to start opening your eyes towards the real reality clarity that is going to give you not a lot of options, but at least you are knowing what you consciously can choose and what all of us can consciously participate in, and why. So thank you for watching. Enjoy your egregorial reality, which is anyhow part of our existence. Bye-bye.